Eastward is a stunning adventure with a lot of steps in the right directions. There are a few issues with pacing, but there's just enough going for the gameplay to make things work. That said, there are some somewhat confusing narrative points that hold it back from its full potential. But we're here to tell you why. I'm Daryl.
And this is Dion, and this is Where We Stand. Let's first talk a little bit about the narrative. So I broke it up into sections. I thought it would be better to kind of go through the narrative. It's different, after you're going through it. It's different every single time because there's different sections that hit different strong points and different weak points. So I want to start with the intro to the game. I think this is very strong. You're kind of introduced to an underground world, and you spend that time kind of learning a little bit about the characters, a little bit about the world, some of the mysteries that kind of get you, on the edge of your seat trying to figure out, well, what's going on? Why am I in this world? And I thought this was really strong, and I thought the character design here was also very strong. Like, all the characters were really likable, and you really want to learn more about the world as you went, and how they hang out the mystery of the open world, I think really puts you into it and really wanted me to play. Like, I got very excited in this first half as I got to do exploring in the underground. Excited to see where I would go, just because I love the design of just this little small area, and it really brought that through. And I think it was really strong, even to the boss battle. It just kept you, rolling and thinking about the game and thinking about the story and where your life could be at the end of it.
And in my case, I really enjoyed the first area. I believe it was called my brain wants to say Pot Creek or Pot Croc Isle. That's your starting location. That's where I call it a prologue, but your essential tutorial area takes place. That's where you get to learn about the two characters that you will be playing as in this game, John and Sam. Funny enough, the opening, actually, before we even get into the main narrative in the game itself, watch you should totally watch that the animated opening, because somehow that fills in some blanks leading up to that point, because that in that opening, that's where you get the glimpse of John finding Sam while he's doing his job as a digger underground. Because when the game kicks off, Sam's already with you. So I recommend, not just because it's a great opening and fantastically animated, but because for some narrative purposes, you're gonna need what that opening gives you as well. But moving on to Pot Croc Isle itself, it's a great and serviceable way to set the tone of the game, which has this weird blend of humor. It's not taking itself too seriously, but when it does take itself seriously, you feel like you're playing another game altogether. It's that balancing act that the game works with, from like that beginning section where it's teaching you about the world and the characters and why you're living underground and why you shouldn't leave the underground and whatnot, to when you get to the very first village, which the first village, well, it's the opening village of the game. It's the first time you're outside and whatnot, and well, it serves its purpose. I'm gonna put it that way. It serves its purpose. It's a beautiful location, and it's where I believe visually the game, I hate saying the generic truly shines, but I mean truly shines. Like, the game is gorgeous, and they wanted to flex on you with that lighting.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And I do like that it's very different, right? Like, your Pot Croc Isle to this first village, it's a very different style, and it makes you like kind of go, oh, this is cool, seeing this different area. They did a fantastic job with that.
But the first village, you're not there very long. That first area, that first section is all to serve to set the tone and get you invested in the story. And I will say, for that opening portion, from then to when you get to the first village, even after you're done with the first village, it made me go from, okay, I see where you're going with this. I think this is weird. Why am I beating things to death with a frying pan? But you know what? I'm not going to question that. This thing is sick. And you got my attention. Is how I'm going to round out that section, especially the end of that first area. Like, I was like, okay, this is a horror game. No, run.
Yeah, no, they did a very good job at the end of that first village, getting you wanting more. And I think they do that throughout, even though there's some lulls, which we'll get into with the middle section of the game, right, and the narrative at least. In that middle section, you're really there's one area that you're in for a long period of time.
It's basically a hub. The middle section
is basically,
of the game, the second act feels like a hub. You have a lot of different objectives there. The game doesn't really have side quests, at least not traditionally.
Right.
You can explore a little bit to like get more information on the town, and you get more lore. You can even play this little game that definitely has a parallel to the main narrative, and whatnot. But for the most part, outside of that, you don't really have much else that you're doing besides the main narrative. And it's here in the middle section of the game where things kind of slow to a crawl to kind of build up that tension again, which for me was hit or miss. It really depended. It took me a bit to really get into that second half. Well, not half. That second act of the game. But I didn't regret my time there. It's just there was more, for lack of a better phrase, what the fuck moments in that middle section that I wanted answered immediately, but clearly they weren't going to do that yet. So rubbed me the wrong way a bit, but I understand why.
Yeah, no, the middle section I did think really provided a stable area that you're in, and I really enjoyed the area. One, I really like the design of the area, and the characters. You spend a lot more time with those characters specifically, and I think that was a good idea. And it made it seem like the intro was really an intro up to that first village, and then that middle section is really, hey, this is the meat of the game. So you start learning even more about the world, and even more about why you're doing what you're doing and why everyone reacts the way they do as things go on. And I think this is probably the city, I think, is probably my favorite area.
It is for me too, I should say.
Yeah, it's definitely my favorite area. It's big enough. It's interesting. I think it has like a cool style to it. And I think that really what holds it in for me. And narrative-wise, even though it felt like almost let's say a new beginning from that point on, right? I did feel engaged throughout that middle section. Mostly, there was a couple lulls where like you're going to explore a couple areas that I didn't enjoy, but there wasn't enough there to really keep me going.
Yeah, and before we move on to the ending portion of the game, we are keeping the spoiler free, clearly, but it's that very thing you said, that the second village or city in this case that you visit feels like a new beginning. That kind of just made me feel like I understand that from the intro to the conclusion of what you do in the first village, it's meant to serve as a tone setter, and really show what threat you're going against, and this and the other, blah 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 blah. I get that, but but that first village was so short. You didn't spend much time there at all, that it kind of just made me feel like, what was the point in having that there? You could have just started us off at the new city, or at the city, and just how I put it just established the threat some other way there, because I just felt like that was a pointless section, personally.
Good point.
I understood its point narratively. That's why I get why they did what they did in the first village. But I guess for the sake of pacing, and I guess my desire to really want some questions answered as I was going through the game, it made me a little impatient in some cases. But I kept my expectations tempered in that sense, since I'm like, nah, this game wants to tell a wonky story, so I have to treat it unconventionally.
Well,
and
I mean, for me, I thought when the way the first village was set up and the amount of time we spent there, I thought we were going to travel through place to place to place. That was really what I was expecting, and then
it felt that way to me too.
And then that is not what happened. Like, it just kind of stopped at the middle right there, and I thought that was weird. And makes you think, well, that's why you're probably feeling that way. I feel like if you went place to place to place, you wouldn't have had that same feeling.
if they did do like a rapid fire, like, oh, you're traveling the world and the seven seas and blah 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 blah, because now you're no longer contained to the underground, so you just go here to here to here with this looming threat constantly following you. But when that didn't happen, I thought, then what was the point in that first area? So good point.
Yep.
Yeah, that's essentially what gave me that feeling.
Agreed. Now let's move on just to the ending section. So first you start off with basically a filler, I'm going to call it. When you start this ending section,
it was funny. It was definitely
absolutely hilarious, absolutely hilarious. But it's definitely filler, and you go through that section and explain certain aspects of the narrative that's really important for you to understand. And because it's so confusing, that's why they probably put it in there. You need something to help you understand what you're going through. In that ending section, and then you move to the ending. And I'll say from the narrative, it closes. They do answer all your questions eventually, but they go all the way to the end. There's like no, I feel like there's a lot of questions all the way throughout that ending section, and then at the really towards the end, you finally start getting answers to, why you're there, what caused us to be where we are, and who each person or each character really is. It takes a while to get to that satisfying ending, and I do feel like it paced decently. I didn't like the ending dungeon. Like, screw that. I did not like the ending dungeon, but I did enjoy my time in that final city and final area, and exploring it. I think it was a really interesting area, and it actually felt really time-wise. I think it was pretty good.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. Any issues I had with the game narratively, for the most part, by the time I got to the end, and they went to the lengths they did to explain everything that was going on, I was like, oh shit, okay,
yep. Nuts.
Yeah, that's a problem. Like I had a feeling that I had some ideas as to what was going on, whatnot, and I could tell the game wanted you to kind of sit on that and really just, as you're doing what you're doing, always have this feeling of something's just not right here. But by the time that ending portion hits, I can see why they went the way they did. I just feel like it could have been executed a little better. Yeah,
they should have drip fed the answers a little better, I think. So you're not just like waiting to the end. I mean, they did a good job of cliffhangering in it, but I just wish they would have gave us. You got to give the player a little bit, and they didn't do that throughout. They just gave it to them at the end, and it's like they really wanted to drop the information all at once because it was easier to do it that way or some sort of situation. But it ends up working out. But I do feel like you could lose players in that middle section, at that ending section, while you're trying to get answers.
Yeah. If they don't have the patience and don't really feel like their questions are being answered and they're just doing menial tasks for seemingly no reason.
Agreed. I did want to take a chance to talk about the background music just briefly. I thought every area had some fitting music and kind of just went with it. It's just one of those. It was a jam. It was good. No, it was really good. And you're kind of listening to the background and it just keeps you engaged. I thought they did a really good job with that.
Yeah, I feel that way too. Almost all of the music in the game, especially the final boss theme, just had me bobbing my head the whole time. Like, damn it, why? I'm trying to concentrate, but I can't. The beat is infectious.
Yeah, no, it was really good. Let's do a gameplay. Let's talk a little bit about the gameplay of the game. I do want to hit on the weapons and combat in general, just to kind of talk how the system works. So you have a few weapons here that you get. The frying pan is the only one I'll talk about specifically that you get, which is interesting as a weapon, but it's no different.
John's main weapon.
His definitely his main weapon, no different than a sword. You got two characters, and they both have the ability to help you during battles, and they both specialize differently and do different things, and they are stronger against different enemies. And I think I like that aspect when you're using two different characters. And then you have a few different weapons, right, with each character. Well, one character has multiple weapons, one character has multiple skills, let's say.
Yeah.
And I like how they did that, but I did feel it was pretty basic combat. And I guess it's the type of game, right? It's very similar to maybe a Zelda style game, the 2D Zelda games in that sense.
Yeah. especially in the sense that, a lot of John's, speaking of his weapons, John's weapons, the frying pan, and we can talk about the bomb. That's introduced very early on as not just as a means of like, actually less of a means of clearing out mobs, although it does save your ass in that regard here and there. It's actually more of a tool to help you solve puzzles that he can't reach, because he has an ability where he can like whack things, like you have your typical like 1 2 3 combo that you can kind of loop, but if you drop a bomb, it doesn't blow up immediately. It starts ticking down. Well, the fuse starts burning out. But if you charge one of his attacks and hit it, you can knock it across a gap and hit a switch on the other end with it after it explodes at some point. So there's clearly a lot of thought behind how each of these, well, at least those two weapons, tend to, what's the word for it? Work together. And over time, you can upgrade it at shops and stuff like that, and this, the other. But the core of it is that's what makes it in the weapons and combat very interesting to me, because you can seamlessly go in and out of both. Like, I can solve a puzzle at the same time as I'm fighting something, even though half the time they'll lock you in a room with mobs of very, very annoying enemies. Very
annoying, which gets us into the basic enemies, now that you say it. I thought the basic enemies were subpar in a sense. They got annoying. They're not too repetitive, but they are slightly repetitive, because as you're in an area, you fight the same type of monsters, which is fine. But it just, I don't know, for this specifically, it was annoying. In every area had annoying enemies that I did not like facing. And maybe it's just a personal issue, but
yeah, and each of them required their own attention, as you alluded to and whatnot, as to what you had to prioritize and what you had to do. And while I'm not going to describe what Sam could do, Sam, sometimes you have to switch to Sam so that she can do something to like that you can combo with her with. Sometimes I'll be fighting as John, then I'll switch to Sam so she can do X, Y, and Z to the enemy, then I'll switch back to John to take advantage of what she just did, which does add some an extra layer to the combat. But otherwise, yeah, the enemies look gorgeous. They look great, and very unique. But that doesn't change how annoying they are. Most of the time, they're just running at you, because if they touch you, you get hurt. It's that kind of thing. And some of them, you'll be outnumbered a lot of the time. Your bombs can hurt you, and the game likes to overwhelm you to the best of its ability. Let's just put it that way. But thankfully, you do have something that can offset that, and that is food. Not just to heal yourself, but to make sure that you have certain buffs and whatnot when you go into combat, if you want to go into the cooking mechanic section.
Yeah, I actually hated this a lot.
Wow.
I felt very strongly about this. I did not enjoy the cooking mechanic. I like the music. But it just felt like a waste of time to me, and I would have preferred to just like buy the meal and call it a day. I just didn't enjoy what it had you do, like customize these meals and you get these new meals. I just didn't find it interesting or unique or innovative. I mean, there's other things that use that. And I've always hated these type of mechanics, because I just feel like I'm spending a lot of time in menus, and I just didn't enjoy it. I know Final Fantasy 15 one has a cooking mechanic as well. I also don't enjoy the Final Fantasy 15 one. So, I mean, it's very, it's not the game, I think. I think for me, it's just having this mechanic just feels like an extra waste of time. I rather have just bought food with different buffs from a store and be done with it.
It breaks up the flow for you. Like you're running up to a refrigerator that wants to spout philosophy at you, which this game has. So you can save your game and then go into a vendor to buy what you want. Only takes maybe max 20 seconds if you're really taking your time, I guess, to like buy stuff, maybe a minute total. Versus if you're trying to like make some meals and whatnot, not only do you have to put the ingredients together and whatnot, regardless if you made that recipe or not before, you have to put the ingredients together, and then you have to go through a slot machine mini game, which I honestly didn't think was necessary.
Nope. Waste of time.
You have to go through that, and it doesn't even go in diagonals. It goes straight horizontal through the middle. And regardless of what you get there, they do. I don't know how they matter yet, but that middle section, they do give you different benefits.
Oh, they do?
To attack onto what you... They do. I'm assuming. I mean, the fish... The fish line up and you get something. The pots line up, you get something. I don't know what it does specifically. I kind of just spammed food.
Are you joking?
And if I got something...
Wait, are you joking or are you serious? I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all.
I'm assuming that I am very heavily assuming that there are benefits that come with that. Otherwise, I don't see why they would make that a big deal. They could just skip straight to you cooking and playing the jingle, but they didn't.
I thought it just got multiplied if you got all 3 of them. I didn't know it changed depending on which 3 you got.
I did notice occasionally, but this might lend to my statement that sometimes the amount of hearts you will get or the amount of like armored hearts you would get will increase based on that, because it's not a static number. They will fluctuate, which would explain a lot whenever I made like the fruit salad or some fish meal and whatnot, and it's never the same stats applied to each one. Sometimes they're higher, sometimes they're flat. It really, I guess, and that's probably where it depends and whatnot. But either way around, that takes a while, sort of, in all that you're doing. And then even then, if you made a dish before, thankfully, you can just skip that whole part after the slot machine animation. But if you didn't make it before, well, they gotta reveal to you what you made.
Well,
so you got to sit there and listen to that whole part.
But
I'm just saying that that's probably what. Really?
Yeah, I actually like the do. Like, I like that.
Well, yeah, I know you like that, but I'm just saying that that's probably why you would feel as though you're not a fan of like the cooking mechanic in general, because it's something that does take up a slot of time, and you have to like shift from like, okay, I'm running through these hallways and fighting, now I'm doing a puzzle and whatnot, and then they hit you with that.
Yeah, and you got to find the ingredients. And it kind of just
stops you.
And you got to find the ingredients. You got to find. I mean, I just. Not interested.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. But those items that they do give you, admittedly, whether we like it or not,
very useful.
They do help you in the boss fights.
Yes, the boss fights. I think this is my favorite part of the game. I like the narrative as well, though. But I think the boss fights are definitely kept me engaged the most. Some of the boss fights are just really, really good, and not just the one that's really cool, but they're all very unique. Very different, and yes. I don't expect that from a game like this. I don't, and I got very awesome boss fights, and I was looking forward to each boss fight and what kind of mechanics I was going to have to deal with. And they weren't. There was only one that was really, really hard for me, because you don't have John. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, that one. I actually did sit there and I did look up like how to do it. After I was like doing that for a while, I wasn't dying. I was just like, when does this fight end? And then when I looked it up, they were just like, oh, keep doing what you're doing. I'm like, okay. And then it clicked. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, because you start doing damage eventually.
Yeah, eventually, once I started incorporating what I should have done based off of what the narrative showed me. But in the moment, I was like, I don't know how long this is supposed to go. But by the time I was running for 5 minutes during that fight, I was like, wait a minute.
Which means you didn't die every time, which I died multiple times because I didn't have any food. See? Food mechanic. Here it goes again.
Also, the first 2 times I did die, and then I got used to dodging them. Then I realized, okay, I know how to survive. What do I do now? then it hit me like, oh, I should probably do the thing. And then even then, once you do the thing, that's when the fight's like, okay, now the fight can begin. Because when that fight's happening, it hasn't officially begun until you start doing damage. I'm starting to realize.
Exactly. So that was one of the annoying ones. Every other fight was fantastic, I will say, boss fight wise.
Yeah,
I was very engaged. No matter what, they all had very different ways to do damage to the boss and how to get them to the point where you can hit them basically with your pan. Right, that's like the whole thing. You get them to a point where you can hit them with your pan. And I think they did a unique job for every boss fight, and they got more complicated as you went. And perfect.
Yeah,
perfect on the boss
they really
fights.
Did.
All right, let's talk a little. Let's kind of give our final thoughts on the game.
Let's talk a little bit about our final thoughts. Okay, so the thing with my final thoughts is, no, you go ahead.
For me, Eastward does keep you engaged with its adventure, narrative, and continuous questions and boss fights. Those aspects are very good and keep you wanting more. Where it fails is some of the filler content and pacing inserted in the game, and some of the basic enemy designs, which can be annoying and really frustrating at times. I do believe it's worth the playthrough at a discount. I would prefer to get this game discounted from its original price, and it's not too expensive. And it would be interesting to see a sequel. I think they built a very good foundation, and I think they can improve on all of the aspects that we've talked about. I think there is such a good way. They have such a good foundation. They can really build on it, and I would play Eastward 2 in a heartbeat, because I think it would be very good.
And I agree with that. Eastward is a gorgeous game that at first I thought it would be, pretty, not meh, but I thought it would be like, okay, this will be a fun little game to play and whatnot. But it actually got me more invested than I thought it would. And not only that, but the music is infectious. The visuals are gorgeous. The visuals alone, I just watch someone play it. I don't care, because it just looks that good. I'll just boot it up again. The gameplay in general is where I feel like it could use more meat. But when it comes to the boss fights, again, that was like they took it from 0 to 100 in those fights, and that's for me. That on top of the narrative itself. Once the narrative really started going, that was nice. I really enjoyed my time with Eastward.
Alrighty, I think that's all we got for now. Thank you all for stopping through to listen here at Duoqueue. If you think we might have glossed over something, feel free to say so in the comments. Don't forget to share and leave a like. Next time you're waiting for a party or searching for a lobby, feel free to tune in again while you wait.
See ya, guys. The Last of Us is one of my favorite games, and I'm happy to see Naughty Dog go in this new direction. The joke is that John looks like